It's 2017 and Tiger Woods, he wasn't just bad, he was a shell of his former self. He can't even swing a golf club without immense pain. In fact, he couldn't even bend over to tie his own shoes. But you see, Tiger, he had a problem, his kids. You see, Sam, who was 10 years old at the time, and Charlie, who was 8, had only seen their father's greatness through old YouTube clips. So the question was, is he just finished? Well, at the time, most analysts had said yes. In fact, I said yes, because it just didn't look promising at all. But I've never been happier to be wrong, because just 2 years later, Tiger won the Masters for the 5th time. But here is where it gets wicked, because what happened in those 2 years, it wasn't just a comeback. It was something that doctors said shouldn't have even been possible. So in this video, I'm gonna show you how Tiger came back from a fused spine, from being a public disgrace, and how he was forced to rebuild his image as a man, piece by painful piece, because his greatest win at the 2019 Masters had almost nothing to do with golf and everything to do with how his kids would remember him. Now, what if I told you that Tiger's fall from grace, it wasn't just a steep fall, it was a complete free fall, and it happened faster than anyone really expected. Now, this all began unraveling on Thanksgiving night in 2009. I'm sure you've already heard a lot about it, so we're not gonna rehash it too much, but just to catch everyone up, Tiger was the man who had built a completely spotless public image, and he crashed his car outside of his Florida house. Now, at the time, it was pretty much seemingly a minor accident. We didn't know really what was going on, but within days, it exploded into something that was much, much bigger. Now, the curtain, it ended up being pulled back on Tiger's personal life, revealing a string of extramarital affairs that literally shocked the world. Sponsors disappeared. Gatorade dropped him. AT&T walked away. His carefully crafted image shattered literally overnight. So while his world was completely collapsing around him, his body started to give out on him as well. You see, he had already had knee issues every once in a while because he had to have cartilage surgery back in like 2008, and he had a stress fracture, I believe, in his left tibia. Then he had like an ACL reconstruction. All of those crazy things were happening, but unfortunately that was just the beginning, because all of a sudden his back became a bigger problem than anything. So at the 2013 Barclays, he was in so much pain that he hunched over in the final round, literally not able to even pick up a ball. But this is where it gets even more interesting, because it got worse. In March of 2014, he withdrew from the Honda Classic with back spasms, and then weeks later, he had to miss the entire Masters, which is a tournament that he cherished the most, for the first time in his professional career. And the reason? A pinched nerve in his back, and that required back surgery. Tiger, who was once regarded as being one of the best players ever, couldn't even make the cut. He couldn't survive an entire weekend at a tournament without being sent home. And again, it still got worse. And this one hurts to even talk about, because back in May of 2017, police found Tiger asleep at the wheel in his car in Florida. And his mugshot that everyone knows at this point, he looked disheveled, disoriented, he looked defeated. You know, it ended up being everywhere. And what made matters worse was that the toxicology reports revealed that he had a mixture of cocktails and painkillers and sleep meds all in his system. And the image that Tiger had become known for, just strength and determination, was now a broken man, barely recognizable from the icon that once ruled the sport of golf. But just like we were talking about earlier, what makes this even more heartbreaking is his kids, Sam and Charlie. They had never seen him win a major championship. The only thing that they knew of him was from YouTube clips. The only thing that they knew of him was all of the drama that had existed in Tiger's world up to this point. And what makes it even sadder is that every time Tiger tried to make a comeback, he needed another back surgery, including one that he had where he had to have a spinal fusion, where doctors warned that could completely end his career or even end up paralyzed. Look, at this point, Tiger wasn't even thinking about trophies anymore. He was just trying to live his life without constant pain. So his goal shifted from winning majors and championships to simply being able to play with his kids. Now, finally, after hitting rock bottom of rock bottom for Tiger, things finally started kind of turning around for him, because in 2018, he brought something that was completely unexpected from anybody, and that was flashes of the old Tiger. For the first time in almost a decade, the golf world was like, wait, there's hope. There might still be a Tiger there. But But you know the sad thing about hope, and I had to learn this the hard way through many things, it makes disappointment even sting a little bit harder. Let me tell you why. Later that same season, fans and Tiger were on an emotional roller coaster because after years of watching him struggle to even swing a club, all of a sudden Tiger was kind of back in the hunt. He was contending on Sundays, he was fighting for trophies, he was reminding everyone who he once was. And these weren't just lucky breaks because he looked great, he was in form. It felt possible that maybe he could have some type of comeback in him. For example, during the Tour Championship in September, Tiger just didn't compete, he actually won. And it was for the first time in like 5 years that he ever lifted a trophy, at least a meaningful one. So as he walked up to the 18th fairway, thousands of fans flooded behind him, and one of the greatest looking shots that you can really ever see, but it was a throwback to his prime. Social media just ate that clip up, sports media shows just literally played it on loop because everyone wanted to see Tiger succeed, and it seemed like it had happened. But golf, man, it has a cruel sense of humor. Just 1 week later at the Ryder Cup, Tiger crashed horrifyingly back to earth. He didn't even come close to winning anything that weekend, and he looked exhausted. He looked physically drained, mentally worn. He just looked bad. And the contrast was brutal from the previous week. And unfortunately, that kind of became a bit of the pattern when it came to Tiger's comeback. He would have these moments of crazy brilliance followed by a hard, humbling setback. Now, I remember while watching him thinking, man, he's not there anymore. But what was really going on was Tiger was dealing with some battles that no one else could see because his spinal fusion surgery, it didn't fix his back. In fact, it forced him to rebuild his game literally from scratch. So even when he had these little minor flashes of brilliance, the question was, would his body hold up? He wasn't just trying to prove people wrong, he was trying to prove that he still belonged. Look, at the time when I was watching Tiger, yeah, he could win on some easy courses, maybe pick off, a small tournament or two and get a win. But what about the majors? That's where things really count in golf, right? What about Augusta, the Masters? Those were just too demanding for him. There was too much strain, and it was completely unrealistic to think that he would ever come close to winning a major again. Now, by the 2019 Masters though, when it finally rolled around, Tiger fans, they had completely changed, right? A lot of people weren't even counting him in. I remember wondering, why is he even competing after what happened in the last tournament? The favorites that were heading in were people like Rory McIlroy, who was chasing a Grand Slam at the time, DJ, who just had his raw power, and Brooks Koepka, who had this killer instinct. But Tiger, he was kind of like the sentimental pick, right? It'll be nice if he won, but we all know that's not going to happen. And the odds, they really reflected it as well because he wasn't even being seen by Vegas as a real contender. Now, even though the world's expectations for Tiger at this time was at an all-time low, including me, I get it, but hey, it's neither here nor there. Augusta itself, the course, it doesn't care about odds. It doesn't care about expert taste. It doesn't care about any of that kind of stuff. It only rewards those who solve the riddle for those 4 days during the tournament. So on the first day, Tiger opened the 2019 Masters with a solid 2 under 70, which means he was under par. Now, this isn't spectacular, but there was plenty of times where Tiger didn't even make the cut. So it was at least nice to see that he made it to the next day. The one person who was really standing in his way at the time was Francesco Molinari. Now, he's calm, he's an unshakable Italian who have repeatedly outdueled Tiger at the Open Championship years before, but he carried a 2-shot cushion going into Sunday. But then something happened that no one really expected because some severe storms that were coming through the area forced the golf course to completely break tradition. The tee times were pushed up about 5 hours, so that final group of Molinari, Tiger, and Tony Finau ended up teeing off at like 9:20 in the morning. But you see, Molinari, he had a problem. He had never bogeyed in 49 straight holes. Think about that. It's pretty insane because the man looked completely bulletproof. But Tiger, he just kind of waited in the wings. He stayed patient. That's where things started to get interesting. On hole number 12, they call this one the Golden Bell hole, but it's a par 3 that's just about 155 yards long. So it's not that bad, but it's extremely terrifying if you're actually out there on the course. Because on this day, remember that weather we were talking about? It was starting to play a factor in how these guys were playing. So Molinari, he decided to tee off first. He sets up and he smashes the ball with what looks like it could have been a pretty good shot, but it ends up hitting the bank and rolling right into the water of Rays Creek. It was such a big moment because it pretty much opened up what Tiger needed. And in this particular instance, as unflappable, as great as Tiger had been playing the entire weekend, he delivered. He didn't flinch. He took a nice conservative line toward the hole, landing it safely in the middle of the green. He did a 2-putt par, while Molinari ended up having to walk away with a double bogey. And then Tiger did something that's really different than what we're used to seeing him do when it comes to his style of aggressive play. He started to play surgically. No hero shots, no unnecessary risk. He just wanted to get the ball in the hole in the most efficient way possible. Tiger, who had been finished for the last decade or so, all of a sudden was just feeding off the crowd. It was fueling him to make the moves that he needed to make at that time. By the time Tiger had made it to the final hole on the 18th tee, he had a 2-shot lead. He effectively made up 4 shots in about 5 holes. His first shot on the 18th tee landed on the fairway. The next one, a nice safe approach onto the green, and then 2 putts later, he tapped it in for a 1-shot win. And at that point, Tiger had done what I had never thought I would see ever again. And look, I don't want to sound dramatic with this, but again, this was 14 years after his last green jacket when he won the Masters, 11 years since his last major, but it was also 2 years after he had hit the lowest point of his life. But then this is where it gets interesting, because behind that 18th green, he did something for the first time ever. He was able to embrace his children, Sam and Charlie, after they had just seen him win a major championship in person. And this is the funny but wicked but amazing parallel here, is that we witnessed the exact same thing with Tiger and his kids that he had with his father back in 1997, when Tiger hugged his own father, Earl. This guy, a mere 24 months ago, couldn't even tie his own shoes, and he had just conquered one of the most demanding golf courses in the world. Look, when Tiger hugged his kids after that final putt, that wasn't just a victory, it was vindication. And I mean, everyone came out of the woodworks to help Tiger celebrate this victory. We're talking about Serena Williams, LeBron James, Tom Brady. They all flooded social media just to give Tiger his praise. This wasn't just a golf comeback. This was a human comeback. I mean, I even felt a little vindicated at the time, because I had been following Tiger for the majority of my life. And I mean, that resilience that he showed, it was just amazing. And speaking of resilience, have you ever wondered how a scientist turned golfer revolutionized the power hitting game with just physics and protein shakes? Well, click here to find out about this bulked up lab genius somehow found a way to play better than 99.99999% of everyone who ever swung a club.